The seminal question the Owl House leaves us, the viewers, with at the end of Season 2A, with the episode Yesterday's Lie, is whether Luz will stay in the Boiling Isles after the end of the show. It's a difficult question, and the show does not provide an easy answer, and I kind of respect it for that. But it does mean the show has forced itself into a corner a little bit, and I'm interested to see where it will go from here. To stay in the Boiling Isles would for Luz mean leaving behind her mother and her life on Earth, whereas to leave and stay on Earth would mean leaving behind her second family of King and Ida, and all those people who have really helped her develop a clear sense of self and mature into a thoughtful and selfless young woman. Now, I believe that either way Amity would certainly come with her, considering how close Amity is to Luz, and considering how Amity does not really have a close relationship with her parents. She does not want to stay in her house, however fancy it might be, if that means living by the rules of parents that she does not respect and does not view as legitimate authorities, considering their behavior toward her and toward the world. But would it be right for Luz to ask Amity to leave behind the only world she's ever known and go to a bizarre and mundane world where magic does not really exist? And where she would also have to leave behind her brother and sister, whom she does care quite a lot about, even as they tease her? The Owl House has placed itself in a fraught position, and I respect it for that. But it is the position of any portal fantasy show that spends a lot of time in both the mystic world and the mundane world, and portrays both, at least semi-positively. There is not a clear option of which world one would rather stay in, and whatever world one chooses, one is going to be losing out on something. And sure, characters could spend time in both worlds. They don't have to leave one world behind forever. But I think it's not the best idea for someone to spend half their life in one world and half in the other. Kind of split the self like that. That seems rather unstable. This is not like a divorced family having their kids spend half the time with one parent and half the time with the other. These are two separate worlds. They are not merely a bus ride or a train ride away. And besides, even if one could theoretically spend equal time in both worlds, and even if one considers, fallaciously in my view, that this would not have any negative effects on you as a person, trying to split your time evenly like that, it would completely diffuse the drama and conflict of a portal fantasy show like this. It would blur the distinctions between the mystic world and the mundane world. They are presented as these two different ways of thinking, these two different environments that enrich different parts of the self, and to just say, oh, I choose both, kind of cheapens the whole presentation of that choice. There would not be drama, there would not be stakes, and I think a show like this that, while not saccharine, does trend toward sentimentality sometimes, especially with how often it does the, oh, this person appears to be evil, but secretly they have a good heart, and they'll join Luz's side thing. The show really cannot afford to dip too far into sentimentality. Luz may choose to visit the Boiling Isles if she stays on Earth and vice versa, but she is going to have to decisively pick one world or the other in which to live. So what will she do? What will the show do? The two approaches shows have for things like this are what I like to call the Harry Potter approach and the Wizard of Oz approach. The Wizard of Oz approach is, to put it even more generally, the more hero's journey-like approach, where the person journeys into the mystical world, finds revelations that add not only to the defeat of the big bad, but also to their sense of self, and they head back to the mundane world as a better and wiser person. But I choose Wizard of Oz for a reason, because that movie is particularly clear about how Dorothy, however much she might enjoy this fantastical world, however many friends she might make there, she is still determined to go home above all else. She still wants to make it back to her mundane world. The movie is adamant about that. The Harry Potter perspective, meanwhile, is completely different. The mundane world is so bleak and somber, so absent of any security or safety that a mundane world at least should provide, that there are no forces pulling the protagonist back to the mundane world. They have no reason to return there. Whereas the magical world is vibrant and intoxicating and just a feast for the senses and for the spirit. So there's no real reason to believe that the protagonist will ever leave the magical world for good and stay in the mundane world. This is, of course, true in Harry Potter. Though Harry has problems in the magical world, he still prefers it absolutely to his almost comically terrible existence on Earth, where he's trapped in a closet by his aunt and uncle and given only the worst scraps of food, so that by the time he goes to Hogwarts, he's basically a stick with no muscle on him. Now, you could say that these two approaches are rather oversimplistic, and maybe they are, but these two main approaches exist for a reason. They make the separation of the two worlds intelligible. One world may not be completely abysmal and devoid of any positive qualities whatsoever, but it's clearly worse than the other, so the character's choice is clear. When a show does not make a clear preference, it is making a distinct and a little uneasy choice. Now, if the show is trying to meditate on that tension, on that inability for one to decide whether they want to stay in the mundane world, which is safe and secure and has people one loves, but is also spirit draining, or the magical world, which is exciting and wondrous and so pleasing to the senses and the spirit and spurs all this passion for discovery, but is also dangerous and also requires leaving behind someone you deeply love. If a show is willing to meditate on that tension, it can be very effective. But if a show just doesn't make a choice, it can become quite aggravating and cause shows to make some rather questionable decisions. Think about the Star versus the Forces of Evil finale that everyone seemed to hate. There are many things wrong with that finale, but just merging the two worlds together and presenting this as a happy ending without any view to the consequences of such a merger was certainly not the best storytelling decision they could have made. It is also, I will admit, rather funny to see all the backlash that show got for its ending, not because it didn't deserve it necessarily, but because I have seen so many fan forums or subreddits wherein people are trying to parse out this problem of the two worlds, and a solution is like, oh hey, let's just merge the worlds together, or otherwise allow the two worlds to basically become one. Maybe make a grand highway between them. And that is a bad idea that never takes into consideration the specific characteristics of the world or the point, narrative, and thematic of making this distinction between mystic and mundane in the first place. So it is quite ironic to see a show actually make this choice and actually merge the worlds only to receive vehement fan backlash. But I digress. I do not see a lot of benefit in Luz returning to Earth. Sure, she has her mother there, and she loves her mother, and she wants her mom to know that she cares about all the love and compassion that her mom has given her, and is not siding against her mom, but she doesn't want to be in this world. And she tries to get her mom to understand that, and her mom is just heartbroken, leading to the tension at the end of Season 2A. Her mother's love and her mother's tears hardly change the fact that Luz is just not happy on Earth, and there is no reason to believe that would change. The problem is not Earth necessarily. V, a complete outsider, managed to make a lot of friends, but Luz is never at home in that world, and I don't think she will be in the future. So I hope the show does not default to some Gravity Falls like see you in the magical world next summer kind of situation, which is a genuine possibility considering how influenced the Owl House clearly is by Gravity Falls. Gravity Falls was different because Dipper and Mabel, as much as they might have liked Gravity Falls, did have a decent home life. They were not dreading returning home. Mabel might be a little uncertain about the future and about them becoming teenagers and going off to high school, and reasonably so, but there is the emphasis in that show that as long as the two of them have each other, they will be able to tackle whatever challenges they face together, and that, by and large, no mundane challenge is anywhere near as terrifying as Bill's cipher, or any of the emotional and existential challenges they faced in Gravity Falls itself. But the Owl House is a little different. Luz is not happy at home, and the show should acknowledge that and find an ending that does not condemn Luz to keep living in a world that she clearly has no affection for when there's a better alternative out there for her. So thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can, and you want to see more videos like this before anyone else does. I'm really interested to see what the Owl House does with its last 11 episodes. Of course, we have the specials, but those are still only 3 40-minute long specials. There's not enough there to make up for the show not getting a 3rd season. So I'm really interested to see whether the show can stick the landing. I think this question of where does Luz go at the end of the show is going to be a major factor in whether the ending is received positively or not. Anyway, tune in soon for my next analysis. It will be coming soon, I promise you that. Thank you all again. Adios, comrades.